Everybody, we got a packed house here tonight. It is standing room only, Kevin.
Yeah, eyes from as far as the eye can see.
We are Scoundrels, Inc., another Star Wars podcast. I am your moderator here today. My name is Brandon Hanna. We've got Kevin Smets.
Hello, in a world where Scoundrels, Inc. fills a room full of people and empty chairs.
And we have Frank Janish.
Hello. No voices from me.
No Fun Frank.
Hello.
What happened to Fun Frank?
Yeah, that's my nickname for him anyways.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
No, not anymore.
Change
That's
that
okay.
today.
We're going to change that today. We're going to have a fun time here today. We are talking about...
I'm sorry, ma'am. No
Whoa.
photography involved, please. Yeah, and you back there, no recording. This is all copywritten.
Yeah, good thing you handled that, Kevin, before
Yeah,
we
of
got
course.
into it.
I'm security.
We are talking about Tales of Light, a look back at the dark side of Star Wars.
Tales of Light. Let's talk about the dark side. Can we talk about how hypocritical that sounds?
It's like yin and yang. We talked about
Makes
this.
no
It's
sense.
It's like two sides of the same
I've had a
coin.
problem with this title since he pitched it.
It's
those
not
years
because we've been talking on this show for a long time now about doing redemption arcs in Star Wars. Are there too many redemption arcs in Star Wars?
You get a redemption. You get a redemption. You all get a
Oh
redemption.
my gosh. You saw Kevin just knocked over my prop. Last year I brought a Boss Nass mask onto stage with me, and this time I brought a lightsaber. It's pretty
Sound
cool.
effects and everything. That's nice.
It's pretty loud. It's pretty good, and it's fun. And maybe it'll like attract people in like a
It looked. Someone just came
like a
in because you
runway.
turned- yeah,
like a runway. Like come on in. We're here to talk about Star
Well,
Wars,
the,
ladies
the
and
actual
gentlemen.
good
lightsaber.
yeah, you're in the wrong. We're the wrong Star Wars podcast. They scheduled us at the same time as another really well-known Star Wars podcast, and Ewan and Hayden are doing autographs. So good timing.
It's
LA
okay.
Comic-Con.
It's okay. You know, actually, I heard they were worried about us.
They should be.
Yeah. So redemption arcs, Kevin.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about maybe one of your favorite redemption arcs in Star Wars?
I mean, I have some theories. I have some thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we should first talk about the macro of redemption arcs. Like, what in Star Wars, why are there so many? Why are there some that are forced? What somebody say? Who has Kylo? Is that you?
I think I have Kylo.
You
I
have
have my
Kylo.
handy-dandy notes app right here. Not to spoil my
That's
talking
your notes?
points
There's like
here.
3 words on your notes.
It's an abridged version.
You could print my notes and make it a paperback.
The details are in my
KDP.
brain.
Yeah.
This is how Kevin Burkhardt does it on Fox Sports, okay?
Listen, we're going to talk, for me, I'm going to talk about the fall of Anakin Skywalker and also how it relates to the fall of Darth Revan, who is a major character in the Knights of the Old Republic. Are we big KOTOR fans here? Yeah. For those who don't know, I make a series of KOTOR movies on Smash City Studios. You can see full-on animated cinematic retellings of the KOTOR movies, plus KOTOR prequels in the Mandalorian Wars and KOTOR sequels after the game. So check it out. But I'm going to talk about how I feel Revan and Anakin's fall and redemption are quite similar. But first, I want to talk about Anakin's fall, because I saw this online the other day, and I actually did some research on it, and it is quite fascinating. A lot of people are trying to figure out the Anakin turn, when he turns bad, and all of a sudden he's killing kids, and like, is it too fast to turn? Should it have been slower? Some people have that opinion. One thing that someone had noticed, and I actually did the research and looked this up, which was crazy, and it's all in the script, not just the movie, but in the script alone for Anakin's fall, which for me was like, wow. So remember in the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin has Dooku right there, unarmed and ready, and Palpatine says, kill him, do it. And he's like, it's not, I shouldn't. He's like, do it. And so he does it, and he kills Dooku. And then Anakin feels remorse, and he's like, I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way. And what did Palpatine say? He's too dangerous to be left alive, right? Be kept alive. Dooku's too dangerous. Fast forward to our boy Mace Windu. Has Palpatine now up against the ropes, has him pinned down. Anakin comes to him, and he's like, no, he must stand trial. What does Anakin say? He says, it's not the Jedi way. And what does Mace say? He says he's too dangerous to be kept alive. He says the same words that Palpatine said earlier. And now that he knows that Palpatine's a Sith, I believe that at that moment, that's when Anakin was like, this is absolutely crazy. They have the same mindset. Why are the Sith are no better than the Jedi? The Jedi are no better than the Sith. They're the same thing. You have a Sith Lord telling him to kill an unarmed man, and now you have Mace that's literally telling him after Anakin, the only one in this equation that says it's not the Jedi way is the one who ends up falling. Why? Because the Jedi let him down, the Sith let him down. At that point, he realized that the Sith and the Jedi were no different, and that's when it was probably easier for him to make the call. And then, he starts chopping off hands and, the rest, and then he, kills kids and stuff. That's a little aggressive. But yeah, so as far as the Vader turn goes, with Revan's turn, they both wanted to protect the ones that they loved. Anakin wanted to protect Padme and prevent Padme from dying. His main purpose is like, you look great, Craig. You've lost a lot of weight. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. I just can't even concentrate. You're so attractive over there. So Anakin wanted to protect the ones he loved. If anyone is a fan of the KOTOR movies or the games, Revan was also very wary of the Mandalorian threat. They talk about it in the Mandalorian show, talking about the great fight with the Jedi, but they're referring to Revan at the time was a Jedi who was like, dude, we need to stop these Mandalorians. They're about to do an invasion. And the Jedi did not believe them. They're like, no, we're not going to get involved. They wanted to be like, we were keepers of the peace. Basically, we're not soldiers. And so Revan went off on his own and with a sect of Jedi to fight the Mandalorians without the blessing of the Jedi Council. So that whole Mandalorian Wars was not with the Jedi Council officially. It was like Revan taking people that were like, okay, you guys don't want to fight? I'm going to take my guys and we're going to go do the fighting for you. And Revan was such a great leader that he was able to turn the tide and win the war. But in that war, he spiraled, and with war, you start to see horrible things. You see it in real world too, like when you hear stories from Vietnam or in the real wars where like you start to lose your humanity and you get desensitized because you see so much death anyway, and that's what contributed to Darth Revan's turn. Anakin's turn was also that. He wanted to protect the ones that he loved so bad that he would be willing to learn the Sith ways to keep someone from dying, and that's how Palpatine was able to seduce him. So as far as the turns go, I just think that's fascinating that that they can be similar. That I think that a lot of times these Jedi turn to the dark side out of a sense of noble cause, but sometimes what's the quote? The best laid intentions or the best
laid plans of mice and men?
No.
No?
No, I don't know. The road to hell is paved. The road to heaven is paved the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Janine, that's your quote. I'm going to quote you on that. So anyways, I thought that was interesting. So as far as the redemptions go, are there too many redemptions? I think that Anakin obviously is the ultimate redemption. It's interesting, too, that Anakin, at the end of Return of the Jedi, he has to die, because if he were to live, then he's got to go, hi, Leia, sorry about blowing up your planet.
And torturing you.
Yeah, and torturing you. Let's go grab dinner at the diner.
Killing all your friends.
Yeah, and all that, and all the children dead and stuff. So obviously he would have gone to war crimes, and so it's probably best that he died sacrificing. So they have a lot of these redemption arcs, and I wanted to talk to you guys about that. Is it necessary for redemption to end with them dying? Is the sacrifice what gives them that redemption, or could they have redeemed themselves and still lived and happily ever after?
Yeah, that's a lot of really good points. And what you just said makes me want to go off on like a major tangent of like, what if Darth Vader was alive at the end of Return of the Jedi and had to like go on trial and answer for his crimes? Because you see, if you read some of like the new canon novels, part of what kind of turns the New Republic against Leia is them finding out that Vader is her dad. Yeah. But if they find that out and he's still alive and she's the one that puts him away in prison, maybe that kind of changes their perception of Leia, and maybe it doesn't give chance for the First Order to rise. I don't know. I feel like it's a podcast for another day, though.
Yeah.
I think what you said was actually like some insightful stuff that I never really thought about how Mace Windu and Palpatine, they obviously say the same thing, but I never really thought about it from that angle about he's too dangerous to be kept alive.
I had no idea they said the same thing.
Yeah. It's like, it just kind of like goes over your head, I think. Unlike Dooku where it went through his head, but
certainly not a way to get ahead in life. He won't be the head of a major corporation.
All right, you get one more of those.
He's not the head of the class.
We didn't mean right now.
Oh,
yeah. I meant like over the next like 45 minutes.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
But something I also noticed when you were talking is like both his turn to the dark side and his redemption had lost limbs involved. He chops off Mace Windu's hand when he turns to the dark side, and Luke chops off his robotic hand, but still his hand, when he turns back to the light. And it was kind of like a hand for a hand. You needed that symbolism, maybe. to
a
turn
little
back.
It's morbid, but yeah.
Yeah, I know Mace Windu was watching from afar, like, I'm like, yes, finally.
Well, Mace Windu's alive, and I'll get to that later. I have a great theory. But, yeah, and going back to the redemption for both Revan and Anakin, the redemption of Anakin really was through the love of his son. His son was willing to just put the saber down and say, like, I'm not going to fight him. You've lost, Your Highness. Like, I'm not, Your Highness, whatever he says. I'm not going to fight my father. I'm not going to kill my father. And, like, that really started to turn him. Now, if you read the comics, like, I feel like his turn to starting the redemption is when he finds out from Boba Fett that Skywalker was the one in the Death Star trench that blew up the Death Star. When he finds that out, there's a great comic panel. It's like a page, and it's Boba Fett saying, it's Luke Skywalker. It's a horrible Boba Fett.
that was not bad, actually.
No, it's not good. That's no, I don't know. We've taken a command post. I only know that from playing Battlefront all the time. But now, Boba Fett says, yeah, that was Skywalker. And then he's alone, and Vader says to himself, Skywalker, and then he's clenching his fist, and then it shows the spaceship, all of the glass like starting to crack because he's so mad at the Emperor not telling him that he knows that the Emperor knew. So I think that's the beginning of it. So the redemption, though, is through the love of his son. With Revan, you can make the choice. So when Revan finds out, Revan gets his mind wiped. Basically, the way he gets defeated is when he's at his worst, Darth Revan, he gets taken out, and his injuries are so damaged that the Jedi are able to mind wipe him, and that's what the premise of the game is you play the game, and you don't realize for the first half of the game, spoiler alert, sorry, that you were Darth Revan of this person that you keep hearing about, which is a great twist. Like halfway, playing 30 hours into the game, and you find out that this Darth Revan is such a bad guy, and then they have a flashback of Revan when the mask's taking it off, and it's whatever player character face you selected. Girl, female, male, doesn't matter. It's great. And Revan can be whoever you want it to be. So the redemption for him is his mind was wiped, and the Jedi reprogrammed him and didn't let him know. They just told him, you're a Republic soldier now, and he comes to find out all this on his own. And in the game, then you can decide, I'm pissed. You guys lied to me. I was Revan, and you didn't tell me. I'm going to go full dark. Or in like the way I did in my movies and the way I played in the game anyway, is that Revan kind of found his way back to the light. And what helped him was the love of his friends, like the people and the companions he met in the game or in the movie. Karth, Bastila, who he falls in love with, or Karth, if you're female Revan, you fall in love with Karth. That love brings him back to the light or her back to the light. So I just thought it was interesting that it's such a allegory for life, right? Like when you're down and I've gone through rough times myself. If anyone knows me personally, like I had a cancer battle, and when I was feeling at my lowest, like my friends were the ones that like lifted me out, and I had dark thoughts a lot, and like my friends were the ones that kind of got me out of the depths. And I can imagine the dark side, not that I was wanting to go, raid a Jedi temple and kill children, but like when I was getting dealt all these bad cards, you have dark, sad thoughts, and it was the love of my friends that kind of kept my head in the game, and I am still in remission to this day, so that's great. So thank you. So that's why I really wanted to tackle the Anakin, because I felt like the Vader one, when we were talking about it, I was like, I'd like to do Vader, because I felt like I always like to push my Revan agenda, the KOTOR, because it's such a great game and story. And again, you guys could watch my movies on Smash City Studios on YouTube. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's like really great stuff. I really like what you said about like Revan's like love for his friends, and I think if you know me, you know I love to playfully bash on the Rise of Skywalker a little bit. But something on one of my most recent rewatches that I loved was the themes of found family and like Rey and Poe and Finn, and how all of them like have that shared love for one another. Maybe it's something that keeps Rey from turning to the dark side. Yeah. But she thankfully didn't have to have a redemption arc. But I want to get to your thoughts now, Frank. Overall, like, are there too many redemption arcs in Star Wars? And if you could talk about one that you either really like or really hate, what would it be?
Sure. When it comes to too many redemption stories, I think that opinion might come up because people might feel like the redemption arc is a little too repetitive in the stories. Whether it's Anakin or right, you're talking about Revan, you're talking about like Reva. All these different characters having redemptions, but they all kind of feel the same. But I don't think it's a bad thing, because a lot of people have an entry point into Star Wars at various times, and perhaps their first story of Star Wars doesn't deal with Anakin and Darth Vader. It happens to deal with the Obi-Wan series or whatever they're watching, and there's a redemption arc there, or whether it's Kylo Ren. a lot of people, the sequel trilogy was their first time into Star Wars. So I think it's important for Star Wars to continue having redemption stories, even if you can have that critique that it's a little bit repetitive in some stories. But I think it also, what Star Wars is a lot about is hope and redemption. There's a reminder that there's hope for someone who has gone down a dark path or who's having a hard time and is struggling. If you just bring it to your own life, struggling, that there is, you've made some bad decisions in your life and you want to correct those wrongs. Star Wars is a place you can go continually and find stories of hope, i.e. redemption, where you can rectify things that you've done in your past and start anew and continue down a path. In real life, hopefully it's not the end of your life, as it is so many times in Star Wars. Although, Reva didn't die, so she's, we don't know what she's doing. But I think it's...
In my fan edit, Reva died. I like Reva, but she had to die.
Yes, I do like the fact that there are a lot of redemption stories because, for me personally, when I'm ever having, a downtime, I want a story of hope. I don't, I know a lot of people will say, well, Kylo should have stayed bad, and yeah, that would have been interesting. But I'm also okay with him, redeeming himself and helping Rey defeat, the Emperor and all that. And do I wish we had more of that? Sure, but I think that's we could play the what if game, and that's always a fun part of being a Star Wars fan, is playing the what if part.
Well, that article with Adam Driver, he talked about how the original plan for Kylo Ren was, and it's always coulda, woulda, shoulda, and I actually like Rise of Skywalker in the trilogy, but I did think that they needed a thorough thread line. Like, they needed a thread from each movie, but they didn't do that. They literally did a baton, and they were like, all right, Ryan, you get to do whatever you want for this movie, and then they give the baton to the third director, which at first was going to be Trevorrow, and when that fell by the wayside, then it's back to JJ. So instead of having, I was shocked. I thought that they would have the three movies, like this is where they're going to end up. Because, when you see the movies with Marvel, Feige, and all that, they know what they're doing. When they were doing Iron Man 3, they knew where Age of Ultron was going to go into Infinity War and stuff like that. So with the Kylo thing, he was talking about how the original plan for Kylo Ren was, you remember in The Force Awakens, he's looking at the mask of Vader, and he's like, help me, grandfather, like, I feel the pull. And you always hear, you're so used to Star Wars, I feel the pull to the dark. And he's talking about, I'm feeling the pull to the light. He's so unsure of himself. And they wanted to tell a reverse Vader story. They wanted him to start where he was questioning himself, and he was trying to do everything he can to feel that dark by, killing his father and all of that. And so he's so unsure of himself in the first one. And then even in the second one at first, right, with Snoke saying, you're just a child in a mosque and all that, which is Kino Loy, by the way. Kino Loy is Snoke, just so everybody knows.
Neither one of them could swim.
Yeah. It's true. You don't tell me. Dude, Snoke can't swim. Look at that. In that robe, go to the ground. But the plan for Kylo was, instead of starting with Anakin, which was good, and then, or the dark, with Vader, dark, and then turning to the light at Return of the Jedi, they wanted to do a reverse, where Kylo was kind of light and trying to avoid the pull of the light. And then by the end, by the third movie, he's just full-on dark. And that would have been interesting, too. And I'm not saying that what we got wasn't necessarily compelling. But, hey, we have a Star Trek fan here. Welcome to Star Trek Tales of Light. Look at the dark side of the Federation. Anyways, I like Star Trek, too, so, yeah.
Yeah, Star Trek is great. But now that we are on talking about Kylo Ren, that was one of my redemption stories that I wanted to touch on a bit, because I was definitely in the camp of not wanting him to redeem himself after The Last Jedi. I thought, wow, wouldn't it be so cool if he just did the opposite of Vader and just stayed bad. But I think that was one of the aspects where JJ kind of won me over watching the movie, watching it unfold. I loved the way that they did it, him having that heart-to-heart with, was maybe his dad, was maybe just in his head, we don't really know, but that's kind of what makes it compelling and interesting. And the Force heal, and you see his scar get healed away, and he physically transforms back into Ben Solo, and I really ended up loving that, because I think at its core, redemption arcs is such a huge part of the DNA of Star Wars, just as much as losing limbs. And it won me over. I thought it was really great to see Ben Solo, side by side with Rey at the end of that story.
Yeah.
The one thing I wish they did was give him a line of dialogue after he turns to the light.
What would the line of dialogue be with like him and Rey right there? What do you think he should have said?
I don't know. Like he should have been like, "It's time for you to solo." I don't know. Something I can't. Think
No,
of
I
a
think
good
he should
show.
have said. What does he say to Vader? He would have been like, "It's time to finish what my grandfather
Ooh,
started."
that's good.
Because he tried it. His
I wish I
grandfather
said
tried
that.
It.
So you're saying like
I'm smarter
at some
than you.
point
You said-
Kylo just saw like a hollow recording of Vader just chucking Palpatine down a shaft.
Yeah. So now it's like it's time to finish what
He's like,
my
"Yeah, I'm gonna
grandfather
finish that. I'm gonna
started.
do that.
Yeah, no, he literally has
I am a-
Palpatine in the air, and
Or he says, "I'm a Jedi, like my mother and my grandfather before me."
He just keeps listing all the people
Yeah,
in
yeah,
his
yeah.
family, and he's just like, "Come on, just,
Yeah.
we know."
Hell of a lineage, though. You got Kylo to Luke, Luke to Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan to Qui-Gon. Come on.
I did
Qui-Gon
like-
to Dooku. Come on. Dooku to Yoda. Yoda to
Whoever.
Revan. We'll just say that.
I did love Palpatine's line of him going like, "As I once fell, so falls the last Skywalker." I was like, "Ooh, that's cool."
Yeah.
They should have called it the Last Skywalker.
Well, the Last Jedi and then the Last Skywalker.
Why
Come
not?
on, man.
I'm still a little annoyed. They all start with the. Doesn't look good on my
The
Blu-ray
Force
shelf.
Awakens,
It
The
doesn't.
Last Jedi.
I need like some mixture, like the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope. Ooh, different
That's right. Yeah.
different article at the beginning.
Article.
Yeah. So Frank, I don't think we got into
No, we
your
didn't.
redemption arc yet.
No,
I don't think you
no.
did your homework, though, Frank. Did
I
you?
think he
Where's your
did.
notes? I don't know.
They're
Let
in
me
his
see your- let me see
brain,
your
like
notes.
mine.
Okay. They always make fun of me for not doing
one
my
that I had
homework.
in my heart.
One that I brought up was, does Lando necessarily have a redemption, within The Empire Strikes Back? Because when we see Lando in Solo, he's very much out for himself, and obviously he takes off with the Millennium Falcon at the end of the movie, So
He's wearing Han's clothes.
yeah, exactly. And so
He's kind of
Same with that guy right there.
and then but Lando's also kind of put in a tough spot on Cloud City. He tells Han, the Empire arrived right before you did, and Lando tries to make up for putting them in that situation by trying to go get Han and also not get killed by Chewie in the process, being choked to death. But then in Return of the Jedi, rescuing Han, right? And then he joins the rebellion, and it's you may have been one way, you may have been a scoundrel, a smuggler, a swindler, what have you, but he was also an administrator of a facility on Cloud City. So clearly there was a point in time where he turned a corner from a life of crime and became someone important on Cloud City and was responsible to a city of people. And he did what he thought was right for the city of his people. Evacuated the city and all that. And then also helping out a friend after he put them in a tough situation. So I think that's another story of, even if you had gone down a wrong path, you turn the corner, it's not always going to be straight and arrow. It's not going to be all good. Once you turn, it's not just all good from there on out. There's going to be bumps on the road, and how do you adjust and how do you learn from what you did in the past and how do you make amends for your wrongs? And Lando, put them in a tough spot, tries to make amends for that, which he does. He rescues Han, and so joins a rebellion, helps defeat the Empire at that time in Return of the Jedi. So I think that's another story that someone can look at and say, yeah, I did some bad stuff. I corrected that. I may have fallen off the wagon a little bit, but there's always still hope to turn that around. And again, Star Wars is all about hope. So
Early drafts actually, I've seen the Falcon didn't make it out of the Death Star.
yeah, they were toying with that idea.
Toying with the idea. That's why in the early drafts, Han says, "I feel like I'm never going to see her again." That was actually written because originally Nien Nunb and Lando weren't going to make it out. And they would have been trying to
Harrison
get out.
Ford
and they would
wanted to
have
die
been
as well.
enveloped,
So
yeah.
but
There's another
George again
theory of
wanted it
death.
to be a hopeful ending. So,
Yeah.
and maybe it's a little cheesy by today's standards, and maybe even back then, but I still think that delivers on the prime message of Star Wars, which is hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like a a really good example, like Lando's redemption arc, because he kind of like at the beginning of Empire, he's like kind of already redeemed, like you said, and now he's being tested again. It's like in life, like even if you go down that good path, you will constantly, be tested, and I'm sure eventually we'll see some of that like redemption arc of him going from like a criminal to like leader at Cloud City and all that stuff, and now he's put in this position where like he has to make a choice to try to protect his friend or like go against his friend. And I think we do see like once there is an opening, he kind of swoops in and tries to save the day at the end there. But that's a really like I think interesting thing of Star Wars that people don't touch on enough, and it kind of goes into like a redemption arc that I wanted to talk on a bit that you might not expect, because I wanted to talk about Luke Skywalker, because he's someone who is, throughout his entire journey in Star Wars, he is constantly being tested, oh, here's an opportunity. It'd be really easy to turn to the dark side. You could kill your father. You could take my place, at my side, and all this stuff. And then we see it again, like he saves the day. They defeat the Empire, but now, he has these, intrusive thoughts with his nephew, Ben Solo, about, hey, this guy's going to turn to the dark side, and he's going to cause a lot of pain, and I have an opportunity to do something about it.
By killing him.
Yes.
Not taking him to therapy, like
no.
space therapy.
But he has the lightsaber in his hand. And he goes, that's probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
But we all have.
He lit the saber first. I'm on Kylo's side on this one.
I don't know.
They activate very easily.
He was going to retract. If Kylo was a deeper sleeper, he would never have.
If
known.
I woke up and you had a gun in my head, like pointed to my head, I'd be pretty foully angry with you.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if we could talk it out, like I said,
you had a gun to my head.
maybe you had like a really hard day that day, and
No,
you
I'm
were
fired
like
up,
knocked
man.
out.
No, I'm gonna burn the place down and all of your students.
And that's what does happen, and that's part of Luke's. That's part of Luke's failure.
It's a good segue, by the way. That's a segue.
That's part of Luke's failure, and then we see him in The Last Jedi. He is at a point where he needs to redeem himself, and that is, I think, part of his own personal journey and redemption arc, where he's not someone who first redeemed himself and then was tested like Lando. He's someone who was tested and kept passing his test until eventually, 30 years down the road, he failed a test. And now he's at a point where he needs to redeem himself, and I think he does. And talk about foreshadowing, I love that line in The Last Jedi where it's like really on the nose. Could you even call it foreshadowing? But he's like, what am I going to do, like take on the whole First Order with a laser sword?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's exactly what he does, and it's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's pretty sick, Frank.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the interesting thing about Luke is, and I think that was what people had trouble wrapping their mind around, is that we've propped up this character of Luke Skywalker who doesn't fail. He's good, like 100%. There's no way he could ever have a moment of temptation. When in fact we have seen him being tempted in the original trilogy, again with Darth Vader and Emperor on the second Death Star, and then obviously with Ben Solo. So it is a hard thing to, when you've thought of someone one way and now it turns out, oh, they did something that I didn't think they would do. I think, and then trying to reconcile that with, no, they're still a good person. Because even, again, just kind of jumping all over the place here with redemptions, there's people on the other side. It's not just the personal struggle of the one who has fallen, but it's those around them that have faith and hope in them, that are fighting for them to, Luke is like, I see the good in you. Rey, even with Kylo, she can feel it. And there's always these people on the outside that are rooting for you and cheering for you and trying to help you, turn the corner. And sometimes it might come to the very brink of, will it or will not happen at that point. But Luke has certainly, I think, run the gamut of scenarios in terms of, I've gone to the brink and I haven't gone down that path, went to the brink, went over the edge, and then I redeemed myself. So he has a very complicated, path with staying on, the light side, the dark side. So coming out of The Last Jedi, I think it was a very, again, pretty hard to like wrap your mind around if you think about it in one way. But if you kind of look at it from a larger view, there's like lessons to be learned there in terms of applying it to your own life, I think.
With Luke too, like it was not easy. A lot of people, obviously, The Last Jedi split the fandom because a lot of people didn't like the path Luke went, and even Mark Hamill said that he told Ryan Johnson before the show, before they started shooting, like, I fundamentally disagree with everything you're having Luke do, but I'm going to do my best to portray this character on screen for you. For me, is very telling and very shows that Mark Hamill, the professional he is, he went through it. And I think that The Last Jedi is so split and divisive because they did push some crazy things, right? Like you like you said, Luke is on this pedestal. We always think of him such the good guy, and at that point, like, yeah, he failed. In fact, like, I think at that point, like, they should just stop. Like, if we are the normal public and we hear that yet another Jedi got taken over and killed, and now there's yet another Sith Lord, I feel like everybody in Twitter, if space Twitter in the galaxy, they'd be like, all right, no more Jedi temples, no more training. Like, let's just stop this. Like, that leads me into my Mace Windu theory.
He got there, folks. He got there.
I got there, and I did it. Listen, I'm telling you, if I heard that there was another Skywalker being trained to be a Jedi, I'd be like, no! What are you talking about? Anakin killed everybody and blew up the Alderaan and killed countless people, and now you're going to train another Skywalker? And so my theory with Mace Windu is Season 2, no, this is a little ridiculous, but Season 2, Mace Windu is found to be alive. He was hiding during the Galactic Civil War. He's all scarred and tattered. Or not before the Civil War, but like right after Episode 3. He finds out that Yoda and Obi-Wan, these sons of, there's children here, but these MFers are going to train another two. There's two Skywalkers still. I feel like Mace would be like, dude, a Skywalker cut my hand off and let his buddy electrocute me and push me out of the building. That's not cool. And now you want to train another one? You think it didn't work? The Anakin didn't work with. And it's the same guy that trained Anakin that's going to train Luke now, Obi-Wan? No, you're done. You're cut off. No, so Mace Windu, the Series 2, they'll take aspects from the movie version where it was going to be Commander Cody watching over Luke with Obi-Wan, which I thought was cool. And I think it's going to be Mace Windu tracking down Obi-Wan and finding out he's going to have a conversation, this epic conversation that only Samuel L. Jackson can have. And he's going to be like, you mean to tell me you're going to train another Skywalker? And there's another one and another one. So I think it would be a crazed Mace that's not necessarily Sith or dark side, but he's going to go out to kill any Skywalker that's alive.
Sounds pretty dark to me.
I feel like there should be no Skywalkers. I mean, I'm glad that Luke lived and everything turned out right. But from a outside perspective, I feel like it was a really bad idea to let Obi-Wan, the person who trained Darth Vader, to train another Skywalker.
Yeah, but who else?
And I yield my time. I'm fired up. I got pit stains now. I'm talking about it.
Oh my
Continue.
gosh! And what I would like to throw, I think because you originally were pitching this as a Season 2 for Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And my little sprinkle of Brandon storytelling magic in that is Reva comes to the defense of Luke when Mace Windu.
Oh, there you go.
tries to
Reva
kill
versus
him.
Mace?
Yeah, and imagine like Mace Windu, he's like about to take a slash at Luke, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Reva just like that, blocks it,
It says,
this party's over.
yeah.
Come on. Come on.
Yeah.
Side note, Reva was named like Reva, just missing one letter, just so people know that.
Are they related? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, anyways, if that happened, consider this fan serviced, okay?
You all all 20 people in attendance now know when Season 2 comes out and Mace Windu shows up. I mean, listen, another line that I think about in A New Hope when he's like, stop, we don't serve their kind here, right? When the bartender, as a kid, you're just like, why are they, just let the droids come in here. But if this is coming from a galaxy that just had the Clone Wars, and what were the Clone Wars? It was robots fighting, right? And to regular people, it was robots fighting the and the Republic. So, of course, you don't want a robot in your bar establishment because robots were you were fighting robots for the last, droids. Although they do say robots once in the A New Hope.
Oh, which one?
Trivia. Which character is the only character to say the word robot in Star Wars?
Robot.
Luke. That's a Schmodown champion right there.
Wait, when does he say it? When does he say robot?
He says the robots. Oh man, I think it's when he's talking with Obi-Wan when they're hitting the Death Star, and he says something about the robot. Robots back home. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Robots
Well, there
only
you go.
time.
Robots and laser swords. Two
Yes.
words you're never supposed to say.
I saw your laser sword. But yes, so that's my pitch for the Mace Windu. But I do think that it's silly to like. It's good. I'm glad they did it. I love Obi-Wan. He's one of my Qui-Gon's my favorite, but I love Obi-Wan. But like, why would Yoda think like, oh, well, you trained Anakin and he was bad, so let's give him another one. Just keep trying. We have 2 more, so one of them might end up well.
Well, did Yoda think like was he under the assumption that Obi-Wan was going to train Luke, or was that just kind of in like Obi-Wan's mind, where he's like, I'm going to train this kid to be a Jedi?
Of course, that was the plan.
Was it the plan, or was it to just like get them to safety and just like see
I
what
always
happens?
kind of
No,
it's
it's
like
like-
sure the Empire didn't find them.
Yeah.
Find them because
Not
they wanted
necessarily
to
train.
No,
Because if they found them, then they'd be turned evil.
Yeah, but I think the whole plan was we got to hide in shadow right now, and we got to wait. And Obi-Wan didn't have the balls to kill Anakin, so I'm just gonna ask his son to do it.
Because that's his brother, dude.
Yeah.
That's his bro. That's why he asked his son to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's my theory about Mace.
I'm a big Obi-Wan defender. My favorite character.
He should have killed him.
Because he's not naturally gifted in the Force. Like he is, like he has the Force, but he's not like 20,000 midi-chlorians gifted in the
Yeah,
Force.
but he lifted all those boulders and stuff.
Yeah, because it was game time, and he's a big game pitcher, dude. That's why, like,
Brandon's
again-
really into the MLB
again-
playoffs right now.
Yeah.
So that's where this is coming from.
How about those?
Exactly. He's like Kodai Senga showing up, to pitch against the Phillies. He's been injured all year. Last time he played, he lost to Count Dooku, but this is different.
There you go.
Because the playoffs are on the line. Yeah. Okay? I probably lost anyone in here who's not
There was
a
20
Mets
people in
fan
here now,
or
and now there's
remotely a
19
baseball
people
fan.
in here now. So, literally, as you hear the door shut now.
I hope we picked that up on the mic.
I'll get add it in post.
Frank, do you have anything to add to this foolery we've been doing for the last 10 minutes?
Kevin has a very active imagination, as we all have seen.
What are you talking about?
It's a compliment.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so did George Lucas.
Yeah. I almost wore flannel today to be like George Lucas, but
That would have been cool.
yeah.
But
I don't
getting
own a
back
flannel.
to kind of the topic at hand in terms of too many redemptions, Kevin, is that your stance? Is that you think there are too many redemptions in Star Wars, or is it from because they all kind of seem the same? You don't want to see the same story over and over again.
I just think that when there's too many, then the ones that happen aren't as special, right? So it was a huge deal for Vader to like, with the love of his son, to like turn and like finally. I mean, he grew up a slave. Anakin did, and he finally broke free, and then he felt like he was a slave with the Jedi because he couldn't be his true self. And then he finally becomes, and then he's Darth Vader, and he's a slave to Palpatine. So he had this whole life of slavery. And the only thing that set him free, and he was only free the last minutes of his life, is when the love of his son saved him. And in fact, and I did research on this too to make sure, I didn't want to give any bad info, but when Vader, they lowered his modulator a little bit, just a little bit, during his final lines before they take the mask off, when he's talking as Sebastian Shaw, when the mask, they lower the modulation a bit with Vader in the voice during his death scene. But yeah, I think that is such a powerful redemption that, when you start having another one like Reva, like I think that Reva, I like the Reva character, but and it's a bummer of like what she went through as a kid and stuff like that. But like when people start, when everybody starts getting the redemption, then it just feels like, if there's another redemption in Star Wars now, like let's say, I mean, I don't think in any current media there's any characters that are in the running to, have redemption. And I am a sucker for a redemption story. I love face turns in wrestling. That means when you're a heel and you turn good guy, you become a face. So I love that. I always love rooting for the people, right? Winter Soldier, I love when he turned good and all that stuff. So, but when there's too many, it just makes I think the one that should be the most important and one that would be, galaxy spanning is like the redemption of Anakin Skywalker and how big of a deal it is. And then when you do it with Kylo, it's like, okay, like, he turned good too, and, because he's always there, and it's like, how many, and, we saw that list. Do you have that list? We looked up how many redemptions there are in Star Wars, and including, like, expanded media. Wasn't it, like, a list of, like, 60 or 70 or something?
I don't know if it was that high, but it was like maybe like 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask you, though, is
Sure.
how do you feel about Asa's Ventress? She has obviously started off with Dooku, and then we've seen her story progress all the way through the last season of the Bad Batch,
Yeah.
obviously, and then also that little time where in Clone Wars where she was working with Ahsoka. Those are kind of like interesting. I guess you could say it is a redemption of sorts because she's still not like
She's still
goody
herself.
two-shoe. Yeah, she's still
Yeah.
herself. Like there is like a darker nature to that character.
She just didn't turn her saber like all of a sudden blue. Like I'm good now. Like
Right,
she's
right,
like
right.
Chris Tim.
I mean, is that like I think stories like that I think are more interesting at this point in the game in terms of how long Star Wars has gone on,
Yeah.
where you do have to like switch up to kind of a redemption story because we have seen them. They can get a little repetitive, yes, but I don't think that means that Star Wars should stop doing them because there's too many of them. They probably just need to get a little more easier said than done. Get a little more creative with how
Yeah.
someone goes down a path, maybe a little more nuanced, not so black and white, good and evil.
Well, one could even say like Boba Fett had like a redemption, right? Where like he's
Oh, yeah,
played,
totally.
and a lot of people had the problem with that, where he was too goody two. Like it was kind of being billed like it's going to be Godfather type show, right? And it ended up as him being like trying to always do the good thing and the right thing, and that might have been an overcorrection. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, he did have, I think that happens because he has that experience, the near-death experience, obviously, and then being that time he spends with the Tusken Raiders. So I think, obviously, that can impact how, when you have something like that happen to you, you just have another understanding that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
That could inform you.
Yeah, and I think I was actually a fan of like the Boba Fett story in the new show, and at the end of the day, like he still wanted to do crimes. He just didn't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah.
But he was still, like he needed to make money. He needed to like sell some things he shouldn't be selling. But he also wanted to like, community enrichment. He wanted to like attend the local basketball games and like, like volunteer at the school and like make sure everyone had food on their plates. But also do some crimes.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously,
Another
like,
classic criminal,
Yeah, he's
Some of
class
the-
act.
Some of the
really.
more like notorious like mafia guys and mafia dons and stuff, like they weren't the ruthless ones. Like you always hear of like usually it's like the crime boss is under the head guy that's like always trying to establish themselves and do those horrific crimes and stuff like that as far as murder goes. Where the smart thing to do is to lower the body count as much as possible because like the more you kind of dip into that. So I think that you're right that he was smart. Like he was, like you said, trying to do community outreach. Have the bake sale, down in the Tatooine market. So
Yeah.
and he got to ride a Rancor. That show, he got to ride a Rancor. Who didn't have their Rancor toy and then put a character on top of the Rancor and ride the Rancor? So I got love for that show.
Yeah, and when the New Republic police, like all four of them, show up at some point, like he has the community to like have his back and say, Boba Fett's an upstanding member of Tatooine.
Grief
and Mos
Grief
Espa."
Karga has a bit of a redemption as well.
Yeah.
Because he's handing out all the bounties, and then now he's,
Yeah.
on Navarro with the city, and he's, the mayor and all that, and, he's helping, kind of like a Lando-ish turn as well.
Very similar, yeah.
But I didn't hear anybody complaining about that.
And the guy with the chops in Rebels, I forget his name.
We would know that at the other panel that's talking
Callus,
about Rebels.
Callus.
right now.
Callus, Agent Callus, he
Callus,
turns
yeah.
good too. So, and even I'm the spy.
You play
Hux.
in
He was turning, but-
Battlefront 2, Iden Versio. She goes from Empire to helping the
everybody,
rebellion.
everybody has a redemption in Star Wars.
So, like, what do we think of like shared like story elements? Because like something that like I've kind of wanted, we've kind of been dancing around a little bit, is like how like all these like redemption arcs, like all these characters have these very similar stories in general, and like look at something like the Acolyte, if they're able to continue that story with, we have a situation with a character like May who's had her mind wiped and now she's with the Jedi, and it's very similar to like a Revan type story. And it's like, so like, is that the same thing where it was like, oh, as long as the redemption arc works, it works for me? Is this the same? Would this be like a similar thing where like, wow, I wish we saw this with Revan, but seeing it with May is like still pretty cool?
I think that that's an interesting thing to think about. And they always said that they take things from the expanded universe, and they've mined KOTOR a lot. K2SO is a funny droid in Rogue One. HK-47 is in Knights of the Old Republic, and he's like a homicidal C-3PO. He's funny, but he's always wanting to resort to violence. And whenever you're trying to do the right thing, he's always like heckling you, being like, "Oh, I'd much rather end this in hostilities, basta." But okay, there'll be no bodies killed today.
So probably Chopper if he could talk.
Yeah, Chopper was a lunatic. Chopper, if you see, you could watch a super
War criminal.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so.
But an upstanding member of the galactic community.
But it's interesting you talk about how they were going to mind wipe, and I really like that. And every chance, as a big Revan stan that I am, Clone Wars came close to having a flashback with a holocron with Revan speaking as a Sith Lord, and they didn't do it. So everybody's just waiting for Revan to be canonized. And I guess in the subtitles of Rise of Skywalker, someone chants Revan in all those acolyte people in the background on that planet, Exegol. So, but that, everybody wants to see it. But a lot of the things with like the mind wipe, I was just like, oh yeah, that happened once before to a Jedi. Like, one line would have been funny. But what's interesting too is it reminds me of a theory that I had back during The Force Awakens. Remember the flashback? Remember how everybody was complaining about how like Rey was like what do they call it? Curly Sue or no?
Mary Sue.
Mary Sue.
Curly Sue.
Curly Sue. What's that? A Mary Tyler Moore thing? Now I'm dating myself. She was a famous actress in black and white days. But anyways, the Rey was so powerful, and then they had that flashback where she was standing there, and then remember Kylo like comes in and like stabs someone like from behind her. I was convinced that they were going to pull a Revan, and that the flashback of Kylo, that Rey was going to find out that she was like one of the Knights of Ren, and like you'd find that out in the second movie, and I thought that would have been cool. But yeah, so they do things. That mind wipe is an interesting way, and I think that with Acolyte not continuing, it'll be a shame not to see that. Maybe they'll continue it in media, but that is a creative way to do a redemption. Because also you could find anger in that too. The way that I portrayed Revan in my movies. When he found out that he was mind wiped, he was pissed. He was like, so everybody around me lied. I was here serving and fighting alongside you guys for years, and none of you told me. Like, you guys all lied and perpetrated this lie. And then, of course, his other companions, like Karth, when they find out that, like, oh, you were Revan, this whole time I've been next to the very person we've been fighting against.
Kevin, I have one last question for you. How many mind wipes can Star Wars do before it's too many for you?
Well, next year we're going to have a special on all the mind wipes of Star Wars. It's called Tales of Memory. A look at the mind wipe side of it.
A Tales of Memory. Whoops, I forgot.
Yeah.
We only have like a few minutes left here, but I did want to squeak in a reference of a favorite character of mine, because I did want to kind of touch on like redemption arcs that weren't. Any characters that we wish were redeemed but weren't.
Here we come.
And if you know me, you know that I'm a big fan of Andor. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. And there's a character in it, Tim, with two M's. And he's a poor gentleman. He was Bix's boyfriend. He made a mean cup of coffee.
Calf.
They call it calf in Star Wars.
Calf.
And mean cup of calf. And he ratted on Andor. He made the Empire come into town. It was terrible. And I just wish he had a chance. Like I
didn't deserve Bix.
I want to try his calf. It must be pretty good, because Bix is a wonderful lady, and he's not a nice guy.
Exactly.
So like, how did that pairing happen? I mean,
Small town.
I'd date someone for a good cup of coffee.
I feel like Salacious Crumb should have had a redemption arc, but he died on the skiff with Jabba. That would have been a good redemption arc too, because like he's sitting there laughing all the time, so you knew he had a sense of humor, right?
Imagine, that laugh like when the Empire is defeated in like celebration and joy. Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
What about you, Frank?
Yeah, I got nothing after that.
Can't
I
follow
just
my
can't think
Salacious
about
Nobody?
nothing but the monkey just cackling throughout the streets of Tatooine or Mos Eisley.
Well, you did forget about another one, Barriss Offee too.
Oh, yeah.
Like she had another redemption. So there is a trend of having a lot of these redemptions, where it's like you're gonna fall. I feel like if you have a Jedi fall, you just say, they'll come around. They all come around. You just gotta wait a couple months and try to outlive it. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here for our panel today. We are Scoundrels, Inc., another Star Wars podcast. You can find us on YouTube, You can find us anywhere podcasts are sold. I don't know where Frank put it. Frank's in charge of all
On the
that.
internet.
We have a great new MySpace page and Friendster page, so you make sure that
But yeah, thank you for joining us. I think this was a lot more fun than I thought it would be, Frank.
This is also our
It was fun.
100th recorded episode.
Is it really?
Yes.
No way.
Whoa!
Wow, we timed that way, didn't we?
We did that on purpose. That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Here's to 100 more. No? No?
We'll see.
We'll talk about it.
We'll see.
We'll talk about it.
All right. Well, yeah, that's our time.
All
so
right.
Thank
guys-
Thank you all so much.
Get out of here. That's the light.
What? Oh, the lightsaber. Yeah. This party's over. That's a pretty sweet line.
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.